There are gazillions. That's a made up number, but it means a whole lot. There are gazillions of opportunities in the U.S. to receive funding as an international student. There is, however, the Fulbright. This is a program administered by the United States government, and it provides um, livable funding for students who wish, for students from other countries who wish to study in the United States. And it's a wonderful program. I can vouch for it. I myself, after I had graduated with a bachelor's degree, applied for and received a Fulbright scholarship to study abroad. I applied to study in France, and I ended up spending 3 years there as a student with funding. There are some eligibility, so requirements. The questions that you need to answer to figure out, okay, where am I going to apply for the U.S.? First question is, what do I want to study? Because when you put that in, it eliminates all the institutions that don't offer that program. That will still leave hundreds that do. And so then you need to ask yourself, what kind of place do I want to live in and study in? There are universities in the U.S., across the U.S., that have every kind of weather you can imagine. So if you don't like snow, you can totally avoid it. Just pick a place in the south of the U.S. where it may snow once every 3 years or never, and you won't have to worry about it. If you love snow, pick a state that's right next to Canada, and you will get lots of snow. 2/3 of the year you will have snow. And there are places in the north of the U.S. where they say they have 2 seasons, winter and August. So it does warm up a little bit in the middle of summer, but otherwise it's cold in those places. So if you do not like hot weather, go to a snowy place. And of course, the middle band across the U.S. is sort of in the middle. So you can actually ask for where in the U.S. does it snow only rarely, and they'll tell you. So choose your weather. Choose the kinds of activities you enjoy. If you love hiking in the mountains, go to a place where they have mountains, and there are quite a few. On the other hand, if you are a beach lover and you have to be near the ocean with the tides and the surf, make sure you go to a place that's on either the East Coast or the West Coast. The Pacific Ocean is much colder than the Atlantic Ocean is. So if you want a cold ocean, you might like California, Oregon, or Washington. If you want a warmer water, saltwater place, you probably want to be on the East Coast. And the East Coast in Florida, the climate is almost tropical. In Maine, the northernmost state on the East Coast, it's their two seasons are winter and August. So the beaches there are cold all the time. Um, there are private universities in the US, and there are many forms of state and public universities. Public universities are run by the states, the 50 states. There is no national university in the US. So you need to choose the right kind of state, taking into account what I just told you, and the size of the university. If the name of the place is University of an estate name, that means it's the largest university in that state and the most important university in what we call liberal studies. In other words, things like sociology and social sciences and literature and cultural studies and things like that. The University of plus a state name is the kind of place you want to look. And you want to choose a state in a region that you will like. The something that says State University of or state like North Carolina State University, New York State University, which is abbreviated SUNY, and there are 8 of them in different parts of the state that have different cultures and different weather, um, and different programs. Again, find where the program you want is located. And those universities that have that kind of name, something state, are usually technical schools. So that's where you will find technology studies. The top technology programs in the United States are generally mostly at private institutions that have a name like State Institute of Technology. But North Carolina State or Arkansas State or any state, Nebraska State, Iowa State, that's where you get things like ecological studies, agricultural studies, some technology studies, like various industries and various kinds of technology. That's where they'll have the biggest focus on those kinds of programs. So in the US, if you want to to get a master's degree in bioengineering, for instance, which is a technological topic, you want to find a good scholarship at an or a school that calls itself something state, Iowa State or Missouri State or any state. Um, the other kinds of smaller state universities usually focus on literature, the arts, and social sciences. And those universities have regional names. So Southwest Illinois, there actually is Southeast Illinois University, is one of those schools. It's a huge campus, and it's a secondary level university. It's not the flagship University of Illinois, and it's not a major technology center, but it is a secondary school in um, Illinois or Missouri or Maine or wherever, in some state where ordinary students go, people that, that don't consider themselves world class, whatever. The people that they want a degree and they want to work in the field and they don't expect to be international leaders in that field. In Canada, if you want to apply to study in Canada, there are two questions right off the bat. Do you want to study and live in a place where the language is French or where the language is English? The province of Quebec, which is sort of kind of east in Canada, has French as its first official language, and everybody who lives there must be able to speak French. And a lot of people who live outside the cities don't speak any English. There are other eastern provinces where many people speak French, but English is the usual language in government, business, and education. And anything Toronto, province of Toronto, or further west, almost nobody speaks French. And English is the language that prevails. So that's your first basic question. Do I want to speak French or English? If you want to speak French, you want to go to the province of Quebec. And the cities and universities there either are in Quebec City or in Montreal. McGill University, a very famous university in Montreal, speaks English, but there are French-speaking universities also in Montreal, and everybody does speak French there. So that's question one for Canada. Question two, what do you want to study? I mean, the questions otherwise don't differ. Question three, what kind of environment, culture, climate do you want? All across Canada, it's cold. It's warmer. The warmest place in Canada is on the west coast in Vancouver, but it's still not warm there. And you'll notice that all the cities in Canada are across the southern strip because every place else it's cold all the time with lots of snow. So it's hard for people to live in most of the country. And, the Midwest, the, western provinces of Canada are of farming, agricultural, ranching, livestock a kind of outdoor athletic activity kind of place, very much like the U.S. Midwest, which is just south of it. The West Coast, the province of Vancouver, is kind of like the U.S. West Coast. It is very temperate. You don't have big winters and you don't have horrible summers. It's, steady a lot of the year, at least along the coast. Inland, it gets hot and it gets cold. Um, but in Vancouver, you also have, a lot of people who like ecology and green concepts and uh, protecting the climate. That's part of the culture. It's an important part of the culture. And also on the West Coast, you have a much greater proportion of the population, and this is true in the US as well, that comes from Asia or in the US from Latin America, from Central America and South America. So there's a lot of Spanish spoken in the US. And in Canada, there are people from Russia, China, all the Eastern Asian countries, as well as people from Canada or the US or wherever. So um, the West Coast states tend to be quite international in those ways. The East Coast provinces have a lot of French history and culture in Canada. And even though English is generally the language used, you can still find French speakers in the rural areas in those provinces. Um, the nice thing about applying to study in Canada is that they have a very generous funding program, scholarship program, a national program for international students. So you Google something like International Student Funding Canada, and you will be really pleased at all the possibilities. And you only have to apply in the one place. Of course, you may find yourself funded at a university that isn't exactly where you wanted to end up. That's also true in the US with the Fulbright program. You can specify what you want to study, but they choose where they will send you to study it. And it ends up being fine. It's not a big deal, but you probably won't be in New York, just as I didn't end up in Paris when I studied as a Fulbright student. So those are the two questions that came up today, and those are beginning answers for them. And I hope that you will be able, from this information, to go online and start searching for yourself. Where do I want to be? What kind of university offers the program that I want to study? Do I want the big state university? Do I want a private university? Do I want a secondary state university? There's also all over the US in every single county. In other words, every area of the US has its own 2-year college system which enrolls thousands of students in occupationally focused studies. So if you want to become anything you can learn in 2 years, nurse, policeman, fireman, funeral director, stage manager, photojournalist. I mean, there are thousands of programs. They all have international student programs, and they are all prepared to accept everybody who applies. And you can, if you want to, spend 2 years acquiring the skills you need to exercise a career or an occupation that, is not at the top of technology, but it's the place where technology happens, where stage settings are made, where advertisements are created, where basic services for health or well-being come from, where safety is taught, where, it's amazing if you Google the career programs in U.S. two-year colleges. It has become the largest provider of post-secondary career-focused education in this country. And, if that's something you want to learn quickly, if you want to become a chef in a restaurant, you can get a 2-year degree in hospitality in a 2-year college. And you will have teachers who are professionals, and you will have the opportunity to intern, to practice, to learn experientially, not just in books. It's a great opportunity. You need to be aware of it. So, whatever you want to do, if you want to do it as an international student, there will be a way. You just need to have a pretty good idea what and when and where and with whom. So I look forward in this class, in the TOEFL class, to answering other questions that come up as you prepare to get a really good English language test score, and then to find and fill out, create your application for studying abroad where you want to go. And thank you very much for listening.